And we're live. Cool. And and you can also you can always check the comments too. You see that the comments on the side.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I don't know. I I like to interact as much as possible.
There might be some
Um,
heads that come in, and I know there might be somebody that comes in and does a comment. I think
oh,
that's
people always comment, man. There's always some the comment quality tends to be pretty high on my show too. I got to say, like, it's not a lot of. I never have to like kick people off or
right.
block
Yeah,
anyone. Although as the
yeah.
audience grows,
There's gonna be there's gonna be some thoughtful comments. I think. Hopefully, I look
yeah,
forward to it. Yeah.
no, people are psyched. I hope the channel grows to the point where there are scumbags and problems, because that's like, because when you get big enough, there's just gonna be just statistically like bad people. So I'm kind of like, I'm looking forward to that.
But that's like a job in itself to like manage that too. You know what I mean? It's like you gotta like delete or not. Yeah, I mean delete all the Nazi comments and the white power stuff and like or reply to them or whatever you got to do. Or I guess you can just ignore them. But yeah,
Yeah. It depends. I never get like white power people. I mean, but there's some people who are like a little bit more psyched about being white than maybe I,
yeah,
than maybe makes sense to me. But
right.
yeah, fucking. Well, YouTube in general, though, like my commenters and viewers are high quality, but in general, like the random comments on YouTube are like people. One of the reasons I wanted to do a YouTube thing is because it's such a schlocky uh, milieu. Like
Yeah.
YouTube is like the mall essentially to me,
Mm.
like as an overall channel.
Mm.
So I wanted to kind of bring the highbrow, bring the highbrowness to the lowbrow zone.
Mhm. Yeah, totally.
But, yeah, man.
So are we live now? Are we on
Oh, we're
the?
live, dude. Yeah. We're
Oh,
we're straight up
okay.
live, man.
Okay.
People are in the chat. I don't know.
Cool.
I mean, yeah, like, yeah, the
Well, anyway,
suffocation record is, yeah.
well, let me
Sorry.
start. Yeah, I just want to say, like, yeah, thanks for inviting me. And just as an introduction, like, I've been enjoying your stuff a lot, so it's really cool to reconnect with you and like have a kind of like structured
Yeah.
discussion about something, which is like not all, I don't really get that chance so often here in Europe to kind of like sit down with. I mean, not at all. Period. So it's really cool to like do this. It's kind of new for me, so I'm also excited to do it.
Tight, man. Do you not have like homies out there that
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of music friends here and stuff like that, but my tastes are so disparate. It definitely is isolating a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you don't know the third Suffocation record, or like, at the art gallery. You know what I'm saying? So, but I think yeah, most of the crowd that I run with here are kind of like art people that are not so hip to certain kinds of music. And so I find myself being the only one, in that milieu that you know what I mean.
I'm
There are
somewhat surprised to I feel like I'm somewhat surprised to hear that. I don't know, just like I mean I know you run in like the art kind of hang, but I mean in Europe everyone's so it seems like just I don't know my when it's time I've spent in Europe, people just seem to know about more stuff in general. I don't
mm,
know, but maybe the art world is not so hip to metal. I mean, in America, you get Matthew Barney and those
yeah,
types were like all about straight up gore grind and whatnot. But
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that's the exception. I mean, I think generally when you're talking about an art school kid, there's little interest in music generally. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I mean, we know people that are visual artists or work in that and also know a lot about music, but that's not the normal. You know what I mean? It's kind of rare that you run into people like that generally. You know.
I mean, I suppose electronic music is kind of king, right? I mean, as far as the
I,
sort of
I don't, I don't know what some of these people listen to Coldplay. I mean, I don't know. You know.
really people in the art world over there are into
Oh yeah,
Coldplay.
like dude, there's a lot of discrepancy in terms of like what they would consider to be good aesthetically does not you know um, equal to auditory arts. You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
I'm like a person would be like deep into some weird conceptual art, but yet they'll listen to like Coldplay. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
there's a lot of people like it's just like they don't see that it's even or something, or like they can't, or they don't know how to listen. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah,
That's
I don't
surprising. I'm like that about movies actually. Like, versus music. Like my what I watch movie wise is like the most plebeian norm. Like I'll listen to Stockhausen for like an hour and a half and then just watch like 40-Year-Old Virgin for like the 10th time. Like it's just
yeah,
like it's like does not
yeah. So
it's
maybe,
like
I mean, maybe that my criticism is not so like, it doesn't hold much water because I do the same. Like I'll watch like a Steven Seagal movie and like love it, and just be like, that's cool. I mean, I also watch good films too, but I mean, there's a pleasure in like watching 40-Year-Old Virgin too, which I'd watched recently.
it's still pretty great, man. It's a great
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
But fucking oh yeah, Ephesus asked were the double stripes planned. It was not planned. We were both just noticing just what dweebs were looking like here. Just not brutal, not sick and brutal, not ready
No.
for the slam, not ready for
I thought about
the
I have a blasphemy T-shirt that I bought a couple of years ago, like a long sleeve blasphemy T-shirt, and my
Tight.
girlfriend just hates it on me. It's black and it has this golden Satan guy with a
Yeah, fallen angel of doom. Yeah,
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 yeah.
and she just like it does not. It looks like some sort of what's that? Like a MMA kind of graphic, T-shirt.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
totally, totally. Death metal long sleeves, man. Death metal long sleeves are such a beautiful thing, man. It just never
Yeah.
gets old to me. I deliberately did not wear a death metal long sleeve today because I wear them in so many other videos, So I just wanted to like it would be like too on the nose.
What do you have? Which ones? What ones do you have? What long?
I got a Morbid Angel Altars of Madness one. Got a Leviathan long sleeve that's hot. I got the new Portal long sleeve that came out.
That's pretty
Dude,
sick.
that shit is hot. Although that new Portal record I'm not like loving as much, but yeah, what other do you know that band Weeping Sores? You know them?
Yeah, it sounds familiar. I don't know their music, but I know the
They're
name.
really
Yeah.
it's they're great. Tight long sleeve. Actually, a bunch of my when I was in I lost a bunch of nice death metal long sleeves in Belgium, in Liège, when I played
Really?
a gig, and yeah, my window got smashed, and my duffel bag got stolen, and I lost all this stuff.
Oh.
This is my image of Belgium, man, is that it's rugged because I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
Just like
Liège
fun
is
stuff.
like So you have like two parts of Belgium. You have like the north side of Belgium, the north section of Belgium, which is Flanders, and then you have the south side of Belgium, which is Wallonia. And Liège is
Okay.
kind of like it's in Wallonia, but it's quite close to Flanders, but not there. But it's Wallonia is known for like this kind of post-industrial, you know, it was a huge industrial zone, and then it just kind of fell off. It was a big coal zone, and so like now it used to be the richest part of Belgium, but then Flanders was the poor, and then Wallonia became very poor, and then Flanders became very rich. So you have cities like in Belgium, like Charleroi, Liège, Louvière. There's these kind of dead zones of like it's grim down there. I mean, there's some
Yeah.
Liège is nice. Liège has like an underground scene, and it's cool. There's some great people there. But I definitely say it's like it's definitely like a lot of unemployment. I don't know about crime, but it's just like a lot of unemployment and kind of misery.
Yeah, man. Did
Yeah.
did you ever happen? By the way, anyone who doesn't know, Luke is based in Brussels now,
Yeah.
which is where he's nine hours ahead. But we know each other from New York back in the day, because yeah, we were just in that scene together. Luke was doing Child Abuse, doing the band Child Abuse, founding member. Great band. They're still around, right? They're still doing. They're still ripping.
Still doing it.
But by the way, do you know Belgium-wise? Do you know this band Helium Horsefly? Do you know them at all?
You told me about them. They're from Liège, right?
They're from Liège. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was They're great. They're great. I'm not sure. I think they might be kind of on indefinite hiatus or something. But if you're into that dark prog, like, you know, KO dot, whatever, this kind of,
Yeah.
they are like very Universe Zero.
Well,
You're
yeah. I
into
mean, that whole tradition is super. I love that whole Belgian Prague
that, yeah.
Zool stuff. I mean,
That's
that's
what,
great.
yeah. I think Helium Horsefly's in that tradition, man. I've really gotten over prog like insecurity, man. This is the thing. I'm like back into just embracing prog. You know, just being like, I'm into prog. I
Yeah.
basically make it. I'm not trying to pretend it's something else.
Mm,
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like I've always loved it. I go in and out of periods with it, of course, but it's like, yeah, I mean, sometimes there's just a band that just you hear and you're just they're a prog band, and it just kind of hits me in a way. I'm like, ah, yeah, this is why I like that shit. You know, it's like Universe Zero is one of those bands. I mean, there's a
Big
lot of
time.
them. I mean, you know, I mean, not even contemporary. I mean, there's so much stuff out there too that I just discover that there's a lot of Belgian stuff too, like, one-off records, a lot of French prog I was getting into like last year, like 70s French prog
I
stuff. And
never, yeah, I never really got into like Magma. I mean, that's what everyone. That's like
yeah, well,
the
that's
French prog. I could never really get down, man. This is the thing.
really, I'm surprised. I'm super surprised.
I know. I mean, well, maybe I need to just revisit. I mean, these things that you don't like that people keep forcing on you over the years. Sometimes you
Mhm.
listen to it for the 900th time and like it clicks somehow.
Yeah.
After
Yeah.
years, you're like, oh, actually, this is why it's deep. I just never. I don't know. Yeah, like
Is it the vocals or what? What is it for you? That
yes. First of
yeah,
all, yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. Just things get. Well, hey, look, when Child Abuse was first starting and Z's was playing, and then even the beginning of Extra Life when we were all doing shows together, there was quote unquote brutal prog.
Right.
That was the sort of moniker for this stuff. So it's like just
Mhm.
prog that wasn't brutal. I was always like, this is really dorky.
Right.
But if it's brutal, then it's brutal.
Well, I mean, for me, it was kind of like I grew up. Well, I grew up in Long Island, right? So there were a lot of people who were into stuff like Dream Theater. So
Yeah.
when I heard Magma and Universe Zero and also like Ruins and these kind of bands, like there was a clear distinction between that kind of prog and Dream Theater prog.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and there's now I can kind of like vibe with Dream Theater. I mean, I don't listen to them, but I kind of like get it more. But like, like the kind of high pitched vocals or like kind of like, that kind of style of like prog,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but that was the distinction. I was like, well, that, like if I listen to Ruins, like Refused to Fossil versus like a Dream Theater record, or like, I don't know, what other bands of that ilk, I don't even know. But yeah, that was like, that's dorky. Dream Theater is fucking dorky, but Magma is like not, you know what I mean? It was like weird people with like, robes and like these kind of crazy grooves, like, and the bass playing was just amazing. And I mean, of course, the drummer Vonder, was just amazing. And
That
yeah,
was
it's
unreal.
how they created this kind of communal '60s hippie vibe, but future. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
So I
like the
consider that aspect.
mysticism.
Yeah,
Yeah, the mysticism aspect makes it different. I mean, some shit like Dream Theater, it's like you're dealing with it really is clinical and about practicing scales or something.
mm,
It's not so much of like a vision. But yeah,
yeah,
it's a little easier to vibe with that as the years go on. I taught a bunch of Dream Theater to this guy. One of my students, he just all he wanted to do is Dream Theater, and he was like this 60-year-old guy though, who was like one of the top pediatric neurosurgeons in New York, and
crazy.
so he could just do, he just had these like surgeon fingers, who could just and just like that kind of surgeon like IQ
Yeah,
or whatever. So he was
yeah.
just like devouring Dream Theater, So it was like, I don't know, it was kind of a fun.
Was he good? I mean, could he do it?
Yeah, I mean, he could completely do it, but maybe wasn't still didn't have that vibe of like I'm a musician. It's so weird what makes somebody musical or what makes somebody's playing like musician type playing, if you know what I mean. Like he could nail all this stuff, but it didn't have that
thing.
like group, like you know what I mean. It's just like
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, when I think of Dream Theater, I think of a guy operating on a baby's brain successfully.
Yeah. I mean, also for me, I was never trained as a musician. And I don't know anything about scales or anything. I mean,
I didn't know that actually.
Yeah, nothing. I know nothing. I still don't know anything. So like,
Interesting.
I would really definitely just, if it was like intuitive based and I can feel that kind of like intuitive based kind of technical music, which goes into Pierce Pierce from Within, definitely. This kind of intuitive based complexity or something like that. There's like, I kind of vibe with that. I somehow just like, I'll pick up on it, and I'll be like, but those, I mean, if like the Ruins or, Magma, all these people, they're thorough composed music, I mean, it's not like they're not like jamming and intuitively based jamming. I mean, so yeah, but there is that difference for me. I like this kind of clinical Berkeley school stuff. I'm just like, it's like kind of stay away from it. I mean, that said, there are some musicians, I guess, from Berkeley that I like. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but
Yeah. Well, a lot of that other stuff, it's like it's prog, but it comes out of fusion, maybe in a way that like some of this other stuff doesn't exactly. That's interesting. Like I didn't know that you were totally self-taught, but it actually makes sense because when I think of all the stuff that you've done, I love though how you don't necessarily know where someone's coming from, even someone who you've been checking out their stuff for years. Like just that I wouldn't be able to like figure out where you're coming, like your original background. I think that's awesome. But yeah, man. I mean, have you been doing like since Child Abuse? I mean, the stuff that I've heard from like Run Dust and like these have you been doing any like heavy, like nasty metal type stuff? Because everything I've heard that you've been doing is more electronic and experimental.
Yeah, so like after Child Abuse, I kind of went straight into like I mean, I had been explicitly doing electronics during like the last couple of years of Child Abuse, and then so when I quit Child Abuse, I was like, okay, I'm going to start just doing this because I was already doing it. But in terms of like another metal band, I had like this one off black metal project just solo called Hell Treasure, and that was like but I mean, I made like 4 tracks, released 2, and kind of just lost the plot a little bit after that. But it was fun to do it because it was with a DX7 Yamaha synthesizer run through a distortion pedal with like 64 notes arpeggiations with kind of with drum machines and stuff like that. So it was kind of like I wouldn't say that it was black metal, but at the time I was really influenced by Inquisition, and I really liked Inquisition. And I really liked that kind of vocal style that he was doing at the time, which was just
that the gurgling.
Yeah, this kind of. So it was kind of based on that kind of vocal style, and then I had a friend that contributed to a violin that I had resampled, and so yeah. So I mean, in terms of like, I always think about I want to do that again, in some form. And just be like brutal again, you know what I mean? I always
being brutal.
I want to do that, but it's hard to find the right people, and as you get older, it's kind of it's just more difficult to find the right people, I think, and also like convince them to be like, hey, I want to be your singer,
right.
That's like a hard sell, you know what I mean? Especially if you're like some random dude. You know what I mean? Well, not random, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. When you're meeting new people, yeah. Did you do gurgling the gurgle vocals? Because that's like a very particular. Because I got to say, Inquisition are cool in a lot of ways. This is a good segue, I think, into Pierce from Within. Because like I actually really don't, as far as death metal vocals, I can be pretty picky. I don't really like the gurgly type Inquisition vocals, where like Demilich. I mean, I love Demilich as a band, like riff wise, but that gurgling, man, I just cannot relate. Like, I don't know.
I mean, I definitely know what you mean. I think that the Inquisition vocals are a lot different than say like the pig squeal vocals of like a slam, like like gore grind band or something.
True. Yep. Gurgling is different than the pig squeal. Yeah.
I like the abstract idea of a pig squeal, and I actually have been thinking about incorporating it into the pig squeal into an audio installation that I'm thinking about putting together. But yeah, I mean, like, I don't necessarily like the timbre of the pig squeal, but I like the idea of the pig squeal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I feel you. Yeah, well, in both cases, the vibe of like something being so low that it's high. I
Yeah.
mean, that is like
Yeah.
almost alchemical in its like vibe or something. You know what I mean? There's something actually occult about like
Yeah. There's
about
something
that.
special there, and then when you watch like these video, I mean, there's a lot of these videos on YouTube, or just people, like these like slam death pig squeal bands that are like obsessed with porn, or or shit or piss or whatever it is, like, I mean, it's a very specified genre that people get with. But when I separate myself from it a little bit more, I'm like, okay, well, this band is good because X, Y, and Z, and this band is not good because X, Y, and Z. And it may not it's not because of the aesthetic. I mean, they might have the same aesthetics. It's just I'm drawn to certain things more than other things, But
yeah. No, I know. Yeah, like I'm very much the same way. Afisa says he's wearing or she. No, he is wearing a Demilich long sleeve right now, which is
nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're a great band.
Yeah, but I definitely like like Devourment. I really like, but I don't really listen to stuff like that. I mean, in general, that's really not my vibe. But they're just doing it on this level that is, it's just good. Like it's like even within this like schlocky genre, it's like somehow refined in this weird way.
Yeah. And very musical. It's funny. I was in New York in August visiting my folks for the first time since the pandemic, and I hung out with Mick. I hadn't seen Mick Barr in a while, so we hung out, and it was really nice to see him. And it turns out that he was vibing on some slam death that I had been vibing on, like Putrid Pile. I don't know if you know this guy, but
no.
Yeah, he's like a very kind of well known. It's a one man band, and he's just guitar and vocals and backing tracks, and there's something special about it because it's one guy, and the riffs are just insane, and he's doing the pig squeal, of course, and it's kind of like this weird violence against women, like shit I'm not cool with at all, but like, there's just something like, one guy like taking on the world kind of vibe that I really like from this band, from this project. And so Mick definitely knew Putrid Pile, and so we bonded again on Putrid Pile.
Yeah, man. It's talking about these different vocals. Like one thing that I was re-listening to Pierce from Within like a bunch of times this week. One of the things I was like, what I like about Suffocation, I think, is that they're like right on the edge of a bunch of different things that like hits this sweet spot for me. Like so, it's like like the vocals. I was like, what is it about these vocals that I love? And like, what it is? It's like that they're so guttural that they're like bordering on the gurgle. Like it's totally not gurgling vocals, but it's like just low enough that there's a little bit of that like high end like bubbling sound, but it's like still it still has the like the death growl,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if we get into Pierce from Within, like there is a clear difference between the vocal that he had done in the first 2-3 records and then when Pierce from Within happened, he started enunciating more.
Yeah.
So that's why you could hear "Welcome to My Church," and what I mean? Like you could actually hear these vocals, like hear the lyrics, and you're like, whoa, okay. And then there's so there's a departure there from him, I think, on that record for sure. The vocals
the vocals are amazing, and the I mean, actually, just the whole production, man. I mean, when I posted about this, one of the first comments was Chris from Profound Lore was like, best death metal production ever.
Yeah,
and like I feel that I think a couple people were like, man, why are you doing Pierce from Within and not why not Effigy of the Forgotten, and it's like I just like Pierce. Why? It's because you suggested Pierce from Within, but also like it's I love Pierce from Within way more than Effigy, even though Effigy is kind of like that's more classic, I guess, as far as like being important or whatever. But like you said, it's so different. The vocals are so much more like yeah, just indecipherable and noise oriented on Effigy, and the production you can't like hear what's going on as much. It's just kind of
Yeah.
like muddy.
Which
I
is
mean,
which is, and I think Effigy was recorded at, if I'm not mistaken, if that was at, it was that the same guy, more at Morris Sound. I think it was, but I don't know what happened. Somehow he got better gear or something, and then yeah, the production is it's much better. I mean, it's like, you know, and then you have the wide pan guitars. I mean, and then that bass, and then the bass is it's so clear. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah. Oh, the wide
Um,
pan guitars. I didn't actually consciously notice that.
yeah.
Yeah, that's part of it, right? It sort of separates it
Yeah.
separates things out,
I
so
mean,
you can
I think
actually hear the
that's
riffs.
normal that when you have two guitar. I mean, you would, I don't know.
Well,
It's not
I
hard
mean,
panned, but it's, you know, it's panned. You know.
yeah, I mean, to me, this standard metal production that's good is hard panned double guitar. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
that's sort
Okay.
of. I
Yeah.
mean, as far as I generally tend to understand it, but like,
Mhm.
yeah, um, yeah, that shit like Effigy is like, yeah, it's a lot more like slam. It's a lot more like that nasty. Like when I can't make out the riffs really clearly, I end up experiencing music as noise music almost.
Yeah. Like a
It
blur.
like a
Yeah.
blur and just this sort of like these gestures of brutality. I end up hearing like, yeah, when you get into like devourment or just like slammy type stuff, I hear that as noise.
Sure.
Same way I hear like war metal, as being like more like noise music. Whereas like
Hmm.
you get to like Pierce from Within, I'm like hearing the riffs.
Right.
As dissonant as they are, you can hear what the riffs are. It's like,
Yeah. It's crystal
very
clear.
very musical, like the chromatic riffs, the atonal stuff, all the angular,
Mhm. Yeah.
um, you
But
know.
you know, there. I mean, if you go from the right, I mean, because I kind of, I mean, I have to. That's another. Yeah. One, as a caveat here, it's kind of like when you talk about death metal or when you talk about metal and you try to pick apart metal, it can be a very dangerous kind of place to be positioned to be in, because you have like a rabid fan base, and you have people like us who are like not metalheads trying to
I
philosophize about.
mean, I think I'm a metalhead, man. I mean, as
Oh,
far
okay.
as in
Okay.
general, I mean,
But
I
you know what
mean,
I mean. It's like there's
I'm not a metal completist, Yeah, I'm not one of these guys that knows the riffs on every single
right, but
song.
I mean, you
Yeah,
run into a danger in being like, you know, there's this maybe not a fear, but a aversion to philosophize about like certain records, or I mean about the music. You know, there's kind of like this anti-philosophical, or not anti-intellectual, maybe that's a little pushing it, but yeah, it's like it's kind of dangerous when you're like, well, you know, this record is important because X, Y, and Z, and you start to philosophize about it. It could be a little bit of a dangerous area to be in. You know what I
I
mean?
know, I do know what you're saying, but
Yeah.
I think, yeah, you shouldn't have imposter syndrome about that you're less entitled to philosophize than
No,
someone
no.
else. You know
Okay.
what I mean? I mean it's either it's
Yeah.
if it's cool to philosophize about it, then you and I are definitely the ones to do it.
Okay. Good. That's good
I
to know.
think I don't know,
Yeah.
but
But you can see
yeah,
that progression, like going back, if you see like the Human Waste record, which is the first EP, and then up to Effigy, there are tracks that are like, you know, and they re-recorded some tracks, you know, like
oh yeah,
throughout, you know, you can hear like certain motifs or certain ideas that were just kind of solidified on Pierce from Within. And that's why I think Pierce from Within is a better record than Effigies, because it's kind of a culmination of all those ideas. You know what I mean? Like there's not any weak points on Pierce from Within that Effigy might have, or that the, you know, breeding the spawn or whatever, you know, or Human Waste or whatever has. You know, it's kind of like it culminates somehow. You know.
yeah. I could feel that. Yeah, Breeding the Spawn. I actually really. I mean, I've heard it, but I don't know it that well. And the first thing, Human Waste, I don't even really know at all. But
Yeah.
yeah, like yeah, they didn't like completely change their vibe on Pierce from Within. Yeah, like it is kind of like a perfecting. It seems
Yeah, it's a
like.
perfection. It's a
Yeah.
perfecting record, and that's why I think it's their. I mean, that's a, you go online, people are like, oh no, Effigy's best, or you know, there's always a fight over which one is the best record. It's interesting that like that kind of early catalog, you know. But yeah, like for me, that's this. Yeah, it's the culmination, you know, of everything. So that's why it's good. That's why it's the best for me.
Yeah, man. I mean, what's weird too to me, like I sort of didn't. I had to go back and check it out that they had the different drummer, right? It was like Mike Smith is like not on Effigy, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's like
it's
yeah,
this guy. What's his name? Doug. something. I forget his
like Bone or Baron
yeah,
or
Doug
something.
Bohm or something. Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't. It was weird because they're both guys are so killing. I mean, they're
yeah.
both and they don't sound super different to me. So I was kind of like I was surprised that there's. I mean, I guess
Yeah, I would
maybe
be interested to see like what I mean to hear, yeah, to know actually what songs that Mike Smith had written, and then the drummer stepped in, because there was that period I think where like I don't know if he played on Effigy or not. I can't remember.
he's
Mike
no.
Smith.
I think he's on Effigy. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's on
Okay.
Effigy. Yeah.
So he must have written songs for the next record, or had played on those, or you know what I mean, like demoed those songs. And I'm wondering like how much of those parts were
Like he
filled
wrote the
in.
parts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. On all of that, man, something I was struck by re-listening to this stuff is like, it's I don't know exactly what I'm perceiving, but I'm perceiving something with the blast beats, like with the blasting. Is there some special, like, is there something different about the way that both of those drummers are playing? There's something about the parts that are like blast beats that feel like really different than your normal death metal or black metal stuff. I don't know. There's this like, I mean, maybe it's just that he's like hitting the snare and kick and everything at the same time. Like he's
Oh,
not
is that a
alternating between
gravity? Is that a gravity grind, or is that what it's called? I think someone would. I mean,
gravity blast.
a
I'm not
gravity
sure.
blast.
People talk
I
about
think
gravity
I think
blast.
Mike Smith. I think Mike Smith developed the gravity blast, if I'm not
Really,
mistaken. I think.
I've had that explained to me, but I don't remember what the gravity blast is. That's like
Yeah, I don't remember what it is either, but I just
it.
know I know the name of it. I know the name of it, but I do remember, you know, because I think Orrin Canfield had told me about the gravity blast, and because he had actually had introduced me to the record,
Oh,
and we are
tight.
talking about Mike Smith, and then yeah, I think he was talking about the gravity blast, because I think he was we wanted to do that too, you know.
Yeah. Well, the thing that was so cool about Child Abuse is that you guys were like metal, but not metal, but metal, but not like it had it, because it was like noisy synth, but it was, I don't know, it had such a like, there's
Yeah,
all this metal authenticity to it, but it was like not actually like
yeah, it was like a
falling right
yeah,
into
it was like a
metal.
step outside the square kind of thing, where we're like in and out of the square constantly. You know, it's
Yeah.
like we're this now, we're constantly moving around. You know,
It's such a good place to be. Alex Debling says, I think it allows the stick to rebound like a double stroke. I mean, that's sort of, yeah,
okay.
that would make sense. I'm not sure if that's what I'm hearing though. There's just like something about the way those blasts, like it doesn't feel like forward moving, like driving. Like there's something kind of like mechanic. I
Yeah,
don't know what it is. Like,
yeah.
um, I don't know the spirit of that blasting in Suffocation. There's something to it that's different. I don't know. Maybe I'm
Well,
just
there's different kind. I mean, also one thing I noticed, there's different kinds of blasts, and I think I know what you
yeah.
mean with this kind of like mechanical, like, you know, there's certain parts where they kind of stop, and then there's like a blast, and then yeah, there's different kinds of blast beats that they're doing. Of course, you know,
Well,
it's not.
because I know in general there's like blast. I mean, there's blasting that's like snare kick, snare kick, snare kick, and like da 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 back and forth.
Mm,
But then like this shit, I think they're doing everything at the same time. It seems like just kick and snare, and like just and
mm.
tom like just all like in unison. I'm not sure, but maybe I'm mishearing the shit. But it's like I don't know, man. I love the feel. I love the feel on that stuff, man. Because
Yeah,
I'm saying mechanical, but this is before people were using all these triggers
yeah,
and
and
like
I know Terrence Hobbs is very very aware of that, like the live element. And if you listen to the record on headphones, it's like, you know, you hear all the live elements. You know, you hear like, you know, the stick hitting this. You know what I
yeah.
mean? You I mean, you hear it's all super live, and tight. And I know Terrence is like really into that idea of like being like, yeah, no Pro Tools, you know, yeah,
Yeah.
it has to breathe. Like he's really into that idea. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah, it comes through, man. Yeah, like just a great, yeah, because there's a lot of 90s and 2000s death metal that it's brutal in a whole other way, right? Like where it's perfect and spliced
mhm.
together, and it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, this is okay. So Skull Crusher 6 says I think it's called a hammer blast when you hit the
Ah,
hi hat, snare, and kick at
yes.
the same phase at unison. Okay, cool. So I'm
Okay,
glad I'm not
thanks.
like completely like
Okay,
glad I'm not like completely imagining something here.
yeah.
If that is in fact what what Mike Smith and the other guy are doing. I feel bad for the other guy. We're like not remembering his name. He's like ripping, but
Doug
yeah,
Boom, Doug Bound.
Doug Bound, yeah, Doug Bound
Yeah,
Baron.
Boom, boom, boom.
Bone.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's funny, so Pierce, I mean, are we gonna go track by track? I
I mean, we
gotta
can go
admit,
track by track. I mean, I think like we don't have to go track by track. I mean, I think we can hit on some like highlights. You know,
yeah, because it's
I
not
mean,
like
all of them are great, but
they all rip, but like let's face it, on a death metal record of any kind, there's not like every track is not exactly a whole new experience. I mean,
right. Well, okay. Let me ask you this:
yeah.
what do you think is the weakest track on the record?
I can't actually remember because the ones it's only the ones that like the invoking,
Yeah.
that actually like stand out as being like the
Well, there's one song. I think it's called
it's like the ones in the
yeah, it's
middle,
called
like
Synthetically Revived. I think it's an older song that they re-recorded. That is, and the lyrics are like the lyrics are about like taking like animating
yeah, it's
yourself with
that
chemicals.
sci-fi shit, yeah.
Yeah, which is yeah, for some reason, I mean the lyrics, I would like to talk about that later, the lyrics, but like yeah, I feel like musically that's the weakest, but it's also one of the older tracks, that they
yeah.
So
Yeah, that's sort of I don't even like that's I find it's definitely not musically memorable because I don't even remember. Although people I saw like I think like that was listed by people like that track or something. I don't know.
Oh,
Like
really?
it was I think on YouTube there was some like instructional things or something. I don't know. Or like it was listed like Spotify was listed highly. But yeah, I mean Brood of Hatred, man, and the Invoking. I mean those are
Brood of Hatred is I think one of the yeah, the Invoking's great. I mean, and also the Suspended and Tribulation or
yes.
Torn into Enthrallment. Those are like the two the longest tracks. And
Like in the middle, yeah.
Yeah, and they're super epic. And that's when it kind of like the lyrics kind of change because what in the beginning, like Throne of Blood and Depths of Depravity, I'm looking at my notes. There's all this like weird gore element. Like he's like talking about like, killing somebody, like actually like with an axe. And then when
what it feels like, yeah.
Yeah, and he's using like the she pronoun, which is like, obviously not a good look now, you know what I mean?
I don't.
Yeah.
Dude, there's nothing if you're dismembering people, there's nothing dismembering a woman is not worse than dismembering a man.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like I mean it's like
well, I mean that's I mean, these guys are like impenetrable to cancellation. I mean, the whole genre is impenetrable to cancellation. So
yeah. Although I will say, before keeping on going, I was reading like just boning up on just slam and stuff. I was reading. It was like there was some article that was like slam and gore grind like confront the misogyny problem in the genre. And dude, I thought it was a joke. It was like Brad from Devourment like reconsiders his lyrics, and it's like he was like getting not like going crazy woke like Albini like falling on his sword type shit, but he was like but he was on some like I think we were like riding the misogyny thing a little too hard. It was like a little bit stupid. We need to branch out. I was like, dude,
okay, wow,
Devourment, dude, getting woke and canceling themselves. But anyway, so yeah, you were talking about the she pronouns in those
right. So like
earlier part of the
in those. Like that has like the very kind of classic death metal, like Cannibal Corpse gore kind of stuff that's going on, like the blood spewed and all that stuff. But then it gets really like that's what I want to talk about, like the lyrics and like how it interacts with the music, because it's like the lyrics in Suspended in Tribulation and Torn into Enthrallment are super like romantic in a way. I don't know if you read the lyrics at all, but there's this kind of they're just kind of like I mean, generally the vibe of his lyrics are all about like confusion of the mind and like and a misanthropic idea about people, like people are bad and he has to like protect himself from
becoming one of these
that and like and has like this real kind of like looking out into the world and like being like almost like a moralistic thing, but like a self-preservation thing. And in those two songs, like, he's also talking about like an afterlife and like, also these existential crises that he's having, and it gets really kind of deep with that, and it's like, I mean, I could read some lyrics, but I don't know if I should. But it's just, it kind of changes, and it's also, that's what I really like about the music, because the music is it kind of attacks you at all different angles, and it's constantly changing, but always the same, and it has like a cubist sort of like vibe, you know what I mean?
Right. There's like certain elements. It's like a consistent set of elements, but then like different songs foreground different elements, or like
and so when you
come
have
out the
this,
gate with certain.
Yeah, when you have this idea with like the lyrics of like this confusing existence, it really kind of, it brings it together for me. When I was reading the lyrics, because I've always tried to read lyrics, and I honestly think that a lot of people in death metal don't really place a lot of emphasis on lyrics. I think that's not.
They do matter, though. I mean, to greater or lesser extents in different bands, but
it just gives you a better idea about, like, get a better feel for the music. And so when you have that combination of this kind of, this kind of blue collar guy from Suffolk County, Long Island, living this like confused existential crisis thing. Yeah. I mean, I'd be really interested to see what he was like, what inspired that, or like why was, like what's going on in his life at that point, because,
yeah. I mean, one of those, one of the lines, where he's just like, I have often wondered what commands a person to kill, or something like that. It's like that's like that earlier in the record, that existential, like imagining yourself as a serial killer. Yeah, I feel the moralistic vibe. Like please help me, like, not become this thing that totally easily could become, and anyone could, etc. I mean, I find that a lot more relatable than the sci-fi elements. I have a hard time vibing with sci-fi strains in extreme metal. It just never. I mean, some bands I like who do that, but that's not an element of it that I like. I mean, Worm.
I think the only band that I like that does that stuff was like Nocturnus from Tampa. I don't know if you heard that first two records.
Oh, that's the dude who's in Morbid Angel and left, or something.
Yeah. So they had keyboards, and it was like totally weird music. I mean, that was a big influence on me for Child Abuse too, because it was kind of like this. I mean, it was death metal, but it's just weird. It's just like not like it's like some weird digital like string synth stuff. Yeah, it's weird, but it's not like dungeons. Check it out. I'll
have to check that out.
Yeah, it's sci-fi based for sure.
Yeah, Nocturnus. Yeah. I just know. Yeah, lyrics matter though. They really. I think a lot of death metal fans maybe don't care as much about lyrics, but it's like there is quite a bit of variation, even within this one record. You're noticing a bunch of variation. And all of that shit is pretty different than like Morbid Angel, for example. Like lyrically, there's no like mythology in Suffocation.
No,
Lovecraft.
No. It's very insular. It's very very personal. I mean, to me, when I read it, I'm like, I mean, with the exception of some tracks, I mean, some of them are, like I said, like influenced by like the kind of gore element that was like in the early 90s. But yeah, I mean, also at this time, like 95 was when like death metal kind of had it was after that kind of like apex. It was kind of like going down a little bit, right?
So like plateaued, like it wasn't.
Yeah, it had plateaued, and it was like going down a little bit. And then when this record came out, and then we were talking before, what records are coming out in 95 of this ilk, and it was I mean, I don't know what else was going on, but like.
Well, we said At the Gates came out,
right.
But
okay, yeah,
very different, Swedish death metal, melodic, it's from halfway across the world. Yeah, so I mean, 95. Yeah, I don't think Napalm Death had a record in 95. Or what was that shitty Morbid Angel record, right? They're the one of many, but
what was it?
Dominion, yeah. Was it Dominion or Domination? That's like
Domination.
Yeah. I was never. Yeah, that record's not really good. Covenant is actually Blessed Are the Sick is the one I like. But
yeah, that's a great one.
But but yeah, lyrically, man, that's so different, dude. Morbid Angel have that kind. It's like not personal, at least on that early stuff. It's like doesn't have that vibe of like I'm personally wrestling with,
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it's like. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's emo.
Right.
I mean, it could be, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, Yeah, and knowing where they're from too is also kind of gives another aspect to it, because where they're from is like in Suffolk County. It's very far east. It's not like in a nice area of Suffolk County. You know, it's kind of in between Ronkonkoma and like Medford. And when you go to these places, and I did go to these places for shows when I was in high school. You know, I would drive, you know, an hour out there to go see hardcore shows in
Yeah,
Medford, and there's nothing out there. I mean, it's like suburbia, and it's just, yeah, it's just kind of, you know, suburbia land, but very, yeah, I want
yeah,
to say
it's blue,
grim, but like, you
but
know,
I
lower
like
middle
blue collar.
class.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Were you ever into Neglect? That was
Yeah, so
something that.
that's interesting. I wanted to bring them up because they kind of have. I did see Neglect a few times in Long Island and growing up,
That's
and
sick. I never saw
the
them.
guy would cut himself on stage, and he would come out with like a noose on his neck.
Yeah. That was
Yeah,
the legends, man, that I would hear. I never saw them,
yeah,
but yeah.
yeah. I don't know who told you about Neglect.
Just hardcore kids in high school. They were just, it was like,
Oh yeah,
yeah, it
yeah,
was just they were always the ones like, no, they're actually like scary, man. Like, they're not just tough guys. They're like it's different.
yeah.
I know it's self harm rather than
Well, I mean, the
being.
band was about like suicide. I mean, it was
Yeah.
like, I think, I mean, that's why I kind of connect Neglect, because they were from Lindenhurst, which is actually not so far from Center Reach. But I mean, I don't know if Neglect had played with Suffocation. Maybe they did at some point, because there was a club in Huntington called the Roxy, and the Roxy did metal shows and hardcore shows, and then sometimes the metal they would just put the shows together.
I would hear about the Roxy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Never
so it
never
was
went out
like
there.
it was so, but Neglect, it was all about like, yeah, death and suicide, and also like self-preservation, very kind of similar to the Mullen lyrics in many ways, maybe not as
Mm.
poetic, but similar, you know.
Yeah. Well, see, now we're getting into some interesting stuff, man, because you're talking about that there'd be like overlaps. I mean, even if maybe Suffocation never did play with Neglect necessarily, but what you're talking about where they might have, or that they would be combining like metal and hardcore shows there. I mean, back
Mm.
then that kind of meant more, and that was like more of a meeting of worlds. Like, I mean, just the idea of like just the idea that Suffocation are New York death metal. I mean, Long
Yeah,
Island, but Long Island is New York. I mean, they're
yeah.
like part of that, like Immolation,
Mhm.
etc. Um, the fact that it would even touch hardcore in any kind of way makes it sort of the way I see it distinctly New York. I mean, there is something very New York about.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time, I think, when you talk about like early '90s Long Island, there was a separation between hardcore music and death metal. I mean, that's for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, like maybe there would be the same clubs were putting on the shows, like, but I would say like for example, like Youth of Today would never, a Youth of Today fan would never listen to Suffocation. I mean, like metalheads
No, never.
were hated by the hardcore kids. You know
Well,
what I mean?
what that was, I remember the way I heard about hardcore was I was this was in Connecticut, but it was a guy from New York, who like I was visiting a friend, and his friend from New York was whatever. We were driving his car, and he was playing this stuff that had guttural vocals, and I was like, oh, cool, death metal. He's like, nah, bro, this is hardcore. And I was like, well, what's the difference between hardcore? And he goes, and death metal. He goes, dude, death metal is long haired faggots screaming about death. This is hardcore. I was like, I
Uh,
am like, it's just like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, then you get it. When you get into like 92, 93, 94. I mean, that's when like the death metal breakdowns were coming into hardcore. So like,
yeah. Well, that's
so
and I guess you could say that it was hardcore breakdowns that were coming into
metalized.
Suffocation. Yeah, I mean, there's a
Yeah,
sort of, I mean, just the mosh element. I mean, I guess like the pit was a big thing in both death metal and in hardcore,
yeah.
obviously. But it's
I mean,
yeah,
there's the speed element of Suffocation, but I actually don't hear much hardcore. I hear grind. I hear Napalm Death in that music. I hear, yeah, but I don't hear like hardcore. You know what I mean? There's like, I don't know. I mean, maybe there is, but
well, you're
it's
not
more.
hearing hardcore punk, certainly not.
Yeah,
But
no, yeah,
like,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
but hardcore in the sense of new school, like or new school in the '90s, whatever,
Mhm.
like Madball, or that this kind of
Right.
like
Yeah.
Bruiser style.
Yeah.
Yeah, like what's the connection between those? Like, because I guess Suffocation is really known for the breakdowns, right? But it's
Yeah.
like in large part, I mean, that's what people say. but yeah, like how much does that even relate to hardcore breakdowns?
Who knows?
It's hard to say, what, like, yeah. But Bull God says you can certainly hear hardcore punk and grindcore. Yep, for sure. Yeah,
Definitely.
that's
But
true.
What I'm saying is that like Suffocation did not listen to hardcore punk. They were listening to fucking Napalm Death. They were listening to Repulsion. They were listening to like, Mortician. These bands like, and also Swedish bands. I think that was also a big influence on them.
Really?
Yeah, I think like Entombed and Dismember. Those. I mean, like the first Dismember record.
That stuff was good.
Amazing. I love that stuff, and you can kind of hear that. And then I know that they did shows together,
really,
in the 90s, in the early 90s, Dismember and Suffocation. So there was that, that catchiness of Suffocation. It's like it's catchy, you can like.
They do have yes, yeah.
There's a catchiness, it's like you know what I
mean? Yeah. No, they have like memorable. They have memorable shit. I mean, actually, that we're not talking about Person Within, but on Effigy, on the title track. There's that breakdown at the end.
Right.
Could be like Sick of It All. I mean, I know that's not where they're coming from, but that like da down da 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 down da down. That's like very rhythmically.
But that was
catchy,
like, was that the first like slam death like breakdown? Apparently, right? Is that what they said?
Yeah. Well, this is what people say. Yeah, that it's like that people say that slam came out of that just like one or two parts of Suffocation, like their breakdowns, like slam people were like, we want to start an entire genre that sounds just like that one part or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
It's hard for me to relate to any musical genre that was just like, that's just like, we're gonna do that one part of someone else's band. It's like hard for me to like get hyped on that idea,
I think there's some success rates with that. I don't know how like, what's the rate on that, but there are some. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but
yeah. Oh, Bull God says, the first one ever is track 1 on Effigy. Yeah, Liege of Inveracity. Yeah.
Inveracity, what does inveracity even mean? I don't even know that word. What does that mean?
I'm imagining like untruth, right? Because veracity is like, yeah. Remember, do you know Doug Moore from Piran?
I don't know him, but I like the band a lot. Yeah.
Aren't they great? Oh, he's such a great guy. He wrote this piece. This was like 7 years ago called it was like called a Death Metal English, and it was just like grammatical stuff about like death metal lyrics and just about like the use of like something and like breeding the spawn and like the use of like gerunds and like participles and stuff.
Right.
It was it was interesting.
Is he a linguist or like an English teacher? Or something?
He's like an English, or no? I think he's definitely some guy. Yeah, I think he's a literary. No, he's a political science guy or something.
Oh, really?
But in any case, yeah. Dude, Piran they're doing something special, man. That is.
Yeah, they're cool. I mean, they started. They were around when I was in New York, but I had hightailed it to Europe by the time they got started. So like, I never saw them. I know the record not well, but I know that I really like what I hear, and they're cool.
They even have improv in some of they like incorporate improvisation into their stuff, which is I don't know of many other bands like even doing that. But
I thought Extra Life had done that. Child Abuse did that all the time.
Really, you had improvised elements in there?
Yeah, in every song.
No shit. Yeah. I mean, Extra Life never did, but I mean, Z's would have, not seamlessly integrated though. We would have some pieces that were like really loosely notated, and then mostly stuff that was just like 100%.
I mean, when I say improvised for Child Abuse, it was more like Tim would play bass on a groove with the drums, and then I would improvise or vice, any sort of combination like that for like a certain amount of measures, and then we would start again. So I mean, like. Yeah, maybe that's improvisation. Yeah, of course it is.
It's almost like fills. Yeah. You're not improvising the whole direction of the music, but
no. It was improvised within that composition. It was like very structured improvisation. Like he was like, "That's the improv part," and then we go.
Yeah, totally. That's when you brought up Pierce from Within, had we talked about Pierce from Within before, or did you just like bring that up like off the top of your head? Because like I would have suggested that if you hadn't, which is so
I don't know.
perfect.
I mean, we might have. I don't know. Maybe in some point in the past, but no. I mean, I just threw it out there because I kind of knew that you would know the record. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah. But it's
I mean,
interesting though, because I wasn't really like when I got into extreme metal and just like death metal and all kinds of stuff. When I was like really young, but I never Suffocation was never specifically on my radar
mm,
until much later,
mm-hmm.
like in my early 20s. I was like, oh, I never really checked out. I was like going back and being like, oh yeah, what bands did I never really check out? And then it's just like I
Yeah,
was like, wait a minute, how did I miss like this just like
yeah, yeah,
absolutely classic band?
yeah, yeah. I kind of missed the boat on it too. I mean, because I mean, I was not in my 20s. I was not listening to metal. I was listening to like no wave and noise and
Yeah.
jazz, that kind of stuff. So like, I was kind of out of the metal zone, which I had grown up in with Long Island. And then when Child Abuse was starting, that's when I started listening to more metal. That's
Yeah,
when
yeah.
that's when the Suffocation came in. That's when like Gorguts came in, and what other bands were important at that time? Like, yeah, I mean, a bunch of stuff, but Meshuggah, stuff like that. But
Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
that kind of kick-started. But the idea about Child Abuse was not really like based on any of those bands. It was just kind of like, oh, like this guitar solo sounds like a radio wave to a blast beat. That's what I'm into that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's like that, like, and then that got me rolling with just like start listening again to like exploring Death and Black and
Yeah.
black metal.
Yeah, man. You wrote some in passing in one of your tweets about this stream. I can't remember what it was that you said. You said like folk complexity or folk
Yeah,
check
yeah.
or what was it
Okay.
that
Yeah.
I was like, what is that? I'm interested in what Luke means by
Well, I
that.
mean, I think death metal is folk music. I mean, it's not in an academic circle. It's for people,
Yeah.
and it's a high complex form of music that's not easily digestible, you know. And so it has this kind of. That's why I love metal. I mean, that's why I love death metal because it sounds like jibber jabber to any normal person. But you can
Yes.
go to a parks department in fucking Floral Park, Queens, and there's a guy that's like listening to the most complex thing,
Yes.
vibing. You know what I mean? And
Yes. Yes.
you can hear it. And it's like that's a really special thing about it because it's like it's not regulated to this kind of academic idea of like complexity. It's yeah. I mean, I can't think of any other example like if you think of like John Jacob Niles or like some sort of folk singer who is there is a complexity there, but it's not like yeah, it's a
Yeah, It's
different
not.
kind.
It's not. Yeah. It's not that technical complexity. Yeah.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
and it's homegrown. I mean, that's when you think. I mean, it's like Terrence Hobbs. I don't think he went to music school. I mean, he like just learned by himself. I mean, and you can hear that enthusiasm. That's why another thing why this record is so really amazing is because the enthusiasm like oozes out of the music, and it's
Yes. Yes.
all
There's love
Hobbs.
there.
Yeah, it's
There's love.
love.
Yeah. Yeah, man. No, this is what I was hoping. I thought this might be sort of along the lines of what you meant, but I was kind of, yeah,
Yeah,
just, yeah, yeah. The extent to which, yeah, music can be technically complex and not coming from an academic background or from
sure.
I mean, this is what's always interesting when people think about like, yeah, I don't know, classical music or something. It's like so complex, and people think of, I mean, contemporary,
Mhm.
new music. It's like it's super technically complex, and it's like, but it's completely it's college. I mean, it's like people who didn't go to college like don't listen to that music
Right.
primarily. And, whereas like yeah, like you said, it's like death metal. Yeah, it is like populist music, but it's
Definitely.
but not
Yeah.
popular, but populist. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what I meant by that, and it's also, yeah, I just think it just inhabits such a special space. It's so singular in like who it attracts and like who listens to it, and you can meet somebody anywhere all over the world, and if they know like Suffocation or Demolich or whatever, like you're
Yeah.
buddies, and
You have a
it's
bond. Oh
you
yeah.
have a bond, you know, and it's like, yeah, it's hard to like verbalize to people who don't know about it because it's or who are not aware of it. And I think it takes practice. I mean, that's another thing. It's like listening to that, like if you just kind of jump into it just and you don't know anything about any of the history of it, you know, you really have to put in time and effort to understand that music. It doesn't take, you can't just do it. You
Yeah,
know
well,
what I
it's like
mean?
jazz. It's like jazz in that way. I mean,
Yeah,
if you're not accustomed to extreme metal, you just think it all sounds the same, and then you
yeah,
and then you
yeah,
get, yeah, and then you develop like a taste and stuff. I mean, yeah, like I think, yeah, death metal, man. There's an unpreciousness
yeah.
to the complexity. You
Yes.
know, it's and yeah, it seems like people don't take themselves seriously in the same way. It's like people take the music seriously, but they don't take themselves as these precious artistes.
No.
You know, the
No.
same way people might in other genres of
Yeah.
like complex
Exactly. Yeah.
music. You know,
Yeah. I
um,
mean, and with that said, I mean, like within the culture, which I'm not a part of, like the death metal culture, but like within that culture, there is like if you watch, you know, which I do often, like documentaries on the making of the Cannibal Corpse record, you know, stuff like
yeah,
that. You know, like there is a musicianship, and it's like, yeah, there is kind of like a boundary of like, you know, you're a musician or you're not. You know,
right,
within the music scene, within the musician scene, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
does he can he play or not? Can he play the riffs or not? You know, it's like, so there is like a hierarchy of skill within that, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I talked about this a little bit in like other videos and stuff about just basically like how there's this false um within indie rock and punky type post punky circles for I think decades there's been this association where people from that standpoint think of they think of technical complexity and they think of virtuosity as
Mm,
being some kind of bougie, like privileged music school thing. So this is
right.
why I like death metal because there is this vibe of like, can you play or not?
Yeah.
Can you nail these riffs? But it's
Yeah.
like it just being like, no, this is actually blue collar stuff to be able to
Mhm.
be good at something.
Right.
You know, like it's not like snooty.
Well,
It's like it's skills. You know.
well, it's artisanal, right? As you
Yeah,
say, or
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
Yes,
So
yes,
it's like a guy who was like living in Belgium in like 13th century, making like the most perfect like glass cups for the queen. You know, it's like
yes,
he's like living in some hovel and you know, like you know, but he's doing like this like amazing stuff. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
Death
maybe
metal
it's
guild, man.
yeah, maybe that's like a stretch of a similarity, but like
No,
it's
no, not at all,
yeah.
not at all. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But I mean, I think that's an unfortunate what you're talking about, like this indie rock kind of like like revileness. Is that a word of like skill? That's an unfortunate leftover of punk, I think, and
yeah,
like, and I mean, at the same time, I love like no wave bands that like also reviled skill, like DNA and bands like that. You know, that like it was not about skill. You know, and then it was like it
yeah.
was.
That
And
raises important questions too.
yeah,
You know, yeah,
but when yeah,
that's
but
a
somehow it's gotten to a point. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's kind of like this. It's regarded as bougie, but it shouldn't be. You know,
yeah.
I
Well,
don't know.
that's the thing. I mean, my friends growing up. I mean, I was from Manhattan. I went to private school and stuff. I mean, my friends who were into indie rock and hip punk stuff were the kids that I went to school with, and the kids who I knew that were into death metal and black metal and stuff, were out in outer boroughs, and some of them became cops and stuff. It's like a
Yeah,
different,
yeah,
but it's
yeah,
like those were the kids who were into technical like virtuosity,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
whereas the kids that could afford top level guitar lessons were ironically not into complexity. They were
Yeah.
just into
Well, that makes sense. I mean,
pavement and stuff.
yeah. I mean, you kind of reject your surroundings. It makes sense. You know, it's like if you're
Yeah,
from the upper class area of Manhattan, you're going to be like, that's not me. I'm into like pavement. You
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not into like technical death metal. No way. Or like technicality. I just want to like
yeah,
live. Where the guys
yeah,
like
yeah.
in the Bronx are like, like I need to find complexity or something, you know what I mean?
Right. Or like I need to be good at something because I
Right.
have pride in like actually like
Yeah.
doing something, you know,
Yeah.
that actually is like real in the world. Alex says there's definitely a jazz like wood shedding element. Yeah, definitely wood shedding,
Sure.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
tools of
Terrence
the
Hobbs,
trade.
it's a total like woodshedder.
He's got to be.
And he just comes up with, he's the main riff guy in that band. I mean,
Yeah.
he's constantly working. So it's like, you know, he's constantly demoing. And so, as far as I know, from the interviews I've read and like watched and stuff, he's just always working, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, dude, Brood of Hatred. Dude, the riffs that
Oh, yeah.
open that are just so batshit.
Oh,
Like they're
yeah.
so
So
like atonal and just like
I know, yeah. So I want to like Brood of Hatred. Brood of Hatred. Like if you think about like the last riff from 4 minutes to the end, I don't know, you won't remember this, but
no.
there's a motif riff at the end. That's, oh my god, that is like, I think that track is so. I wouldn't say it's like the best track, but it has the most effect on me for some reason in terms of the dissonance and stuff. It's just like, yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Well, this motif, like he like recalls stuff from earlier in the
Yeah,
song,
and
right?
then it kind of like grows in a weird way, and yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you musically the jargon, but it's like, yeah, just go after this interview, go back to it, and like you'll know what 4 minutes to the end. There's just this kind of this, yeah, it's amazing, it's so good, and that, I mean, the lyrics for that, I mean, if I look at my notes, the lyrics of that are just kind of also just hating mankind and, you know, mankind was created to be violent and sick. You know, this has a bad idea about human nature.
Well, of course, my response to that is always like, compared to what, you know, is the like. I mean, that's always my thing when it comes to sort of that mix of moralism and misanthropy. You know,
yeah,
like humanity is such scum, or like my friends are always just like, most people are not that smart. I'm like, well, then compared to what? I mean, you know, I don't know. It's like, yeah. But I like the moralism, the morality of
it's hidden. That's for sure. You know.
Oh yeah, Mullen cares, man. Mullen cares.
Yeah, and I was like thinking about like, so when I was reading the lyrics, I was like, well, you know, like we're like, you know, this hatred of humanity and like, or like this self-preservation and thinking humans are bad, like, and then I started digging into like Confucianism, because I was thinking, because there is like I told you before, it was like, oh yeah, well, there, you know, Confucius never really talked about. So I studied Chinese history in Brooklyn College.
I knew that, and I forgot that. That
yeah,
is
yeah.
based.
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that, like, I was getting on the Confucius tip for a while, but so Confucius never really said anything about human nature. But like, there was another philosopher called Mencius, that was from this a Confucian scholar that thought that humans were good. You know, he was like, yeah, humans are good. But then there was another philosopher who I called Zun Kuang, who is like this total opposite of Mencius. It was just kind of this, he just thought that humans were just bad, and the only way to be saved from their evilness was through a set of ethical codes. And so, like, yeah, I mean, like, maybe it's a stretch, but yeah, maybe Mullen's in that tradition a little bit. You know, it's like,
yeah. I always with that ancient stuff, I always wonder, like, though, like what people even mean by evil versus not.
I think like in that case, it was like a very set standard idea of like avarice, you know, adultery, perhaps, cheating, lying. I mean, these are basic ideas of like what is good and what's bad. You know what I mean?
Lying and an ability to control your primal instinct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And those like ethical codes are the only way to save everybody from that. Which is, I mean, we kind of live that way now, I guess. I mean, maybe a little bit, you know.
Yeah. The idea of human nature being bad. I mean, yeah, I don't know if there's any death metal that's like really dealing with thinking that human nature is naturally good. I mean,
I don't know. Well, I mean, there's kind of like this. I mean, think of Cannibal Corpse or something that's very exaggerated, hyperbole idea of human nature. I mean, it's kind of like fun and games, stab, blood.
Yeah.
Gore, you know what I mean? It's kind of, yeah, it kind of comes from like the gore film idea of this kind of exaggerated emotional thing, you know, or so yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think we talk too much about that, you know. When I
Yeah.
think about Cannibal Corpse, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of, there's like political implications. I mean, to what you're talking about with those Confucian guys,
Sure,
right? I mean, I don't know
sure.
just
No,
how law should work. I'm not,
yeah,
yeah,
I
I'm
don't
not.
want to get into that conversation.
Yeah. Well, I don't, yeah, I mean, I don't know how, yeah. Death metal tends to be very apolitical too, which is great.
Sure, yeah.
Generally speaking, I think, you know.
Well, I'm trying to think of a political death metal band. I can't think of one.
Well, if you consider Napalm Death,
Yeah,
but they're kind of an exception to the rule, you know, and they're
huge
like,
exception.
they
Huge
kind
exception.
of invented grind and then bailed and kind of went death metal. Although, man, I love Napalm Death. The death metal phase in the '90s is like,
Yeah,
I'm so into it, man.
I love that
Um,
band because they're so they seem like super nice guys. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
I think they are,
Uh,
man. Yeah,
and they're like this British like left wingers, you know, like from the punk scene, and yeah, this is, and they're just like lifers, and yeah, I have a lot of respect for them. And they love the Cardiacs, who I think are a fantastic band.
dude,
Uh,
it took me years to really grasp how sick the Cardiacs are, man. I mean,
yeah,
that's or were, yeah.
amazing.
There's so much bigger in Europe than over here too, right? It's like fucking
I don't. I mean, I don't know how big they were. I mean, I know I've seen some concert footage of them in England, and yeah, there were a shit ton of people there. But
yeah.
I don't think they ever toured the states, or if maybe
I don't
once.
even know if they did, but I mean, I
Yeah.
guess yeah, like Blur took them on tour or something in the
Oh, really?
'90s or whatever.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
I
didn't know
think that.
that.
Yeah, and I think they got yeah, like people did not like them on that tour, but yeah, Blur
Yeah.
was like trying to represent for Cardiacs, but yeah, Napalm Death rides for Cardiac. Yeah, yeah, like different. I think some death metal artists are really open and are into a lot of different stuff, and then some
Sure.
are just like literally they're just like we're into Slayer and that's it. Like you know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about Suffocation too. It's kind of like, yeah. I mean, he's Hobbs. I think like listens to a lot of different things as far as I know. But I
I
mean,
would imagine. Yeah,
but he's also just really into metal. And
yeah,
that's also the strong point about Suffocation is like when they asked him in interviews about the record, about the music, it's just kind of like he's very like simplistic about the idea of this band. He's just kind of like keep it brutal, like that's the
interesting.
idea. And there's
Yeah,
nothing else. It's just kind of like keep it brutal, dude. Like, yeah, I like these kind of band, I like these bands X, Y, and Z, but he's not talking about like Cecil Taylor or fucking, you know what I mean?
right,
It's
right, right,
like that, it's just kind
right,
of like
right.
that's it. Like Malmsteen and Hendrix, like which are obviously touchstones for him. But
Yeah,
like
as a
that's
soloist
it.
at the very least. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That's
So
also some interesting shit with genre too. It's like there's so many. Something that I love about death metal in general is like I'm trying to think of how to say this. It's along the lines of what you're saying. There's like an embracing of that you're doing a genre. Like there's an
mhm.
embracing of that you're like it's rather than just being like, man, like I don't even call it metal. I just call it music and categories don't like this there isn't so much of that vibe
Mhm.
the way there is in like other I don't know like in jazz there's so many people who are like this isn't even jazz, it's just creative music or it's just you know what I mean, it's
Right,
like not
right, yeah.
it there's I think with a lot of death metal there's this more like frank acceptance of like no we are like just a great death metal band,
Right,
rather
and
than
there's
trying
some,
to
yeah.
be like, we're calling into question the very concept of.
Right, and there's such a strength, and I always try to return to this idea of like staying the same is like such a huge strong point, and not progressing. And I mean, not progressing, but like you can progress, but like yeah, like the ideas of progression or something like that are just like BS. It's kind of like
Yes.
stay in your zone and then that lane and just like press pedal to the metal in that lane. It's like there's something really I like that. I love that idea. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Where progression just means getting better at what you're already doing, not like changing what you're doing. It's just
Right.
like
Exactly.
refining,
It
which,
refine. Yeah.
yeah. Although, did they? That's the thing. It's like, are they Suffocation? I mean, I haven't. the later records I've only like sampled little bits of, and I'm like, this sounds great. I mean, never sounds bad to me.
Yeah.
I've never heard anything where I was like, oh, that's like way sicker than Pierce from Within or way sicker than Effigy.
I had to say that Souls to Deny, which came out like I think it was 2000. I don't know. That was like so they broke up and then they got back together and then they did Souls to Deny, and that record I really like a lot. But then and then I got then I was listening to the next two records and there was a live record or something too. But then I kind of just fell off. I kind of like I stopped following them, but I kept on listening to Effigy and Pierce and Souls to Deny. But Souls to Deny is great because Mike Smith is actually back on the kit on that record. And there's good track. I mean, that's the thing. It's like when you listen to the new Suffocation record, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be new, but it's good,
yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's like, consistency. It's not like reinventing the wheel and stuff.
No.
I take so much New York pride with this band though. I mean, New York death metal in general, man. I mean, it's like, I mean, dude, honestly, this record is like, it's good that this is the sort of like touchstone record that we're talking about. But in general, Immolation as a band, man, I'm even more into them actually than Suffocation. I mean, they're less like defining of a thing, and there's sort of like less to talk about maybe as far as their history. But I mean, are you into Immolation at all? Like,
I'm not a huge Immolation guy. I love Incantation, but
also great. I mean, they're a little bit more like consider. They're like they get the credit for being like
I'm waiting to get into Immolation. It's gonna happen.
Well, that's the thing. It's like they're not like way different than these bands, and they're not like as important as far as like defining elements and stuff. But just the riffs themselves, like especially just like harmonically, and just Immolation is really really sick.
And they were New Jersey, I believe, right? Or were they?
I think they're Yonkers. I think.
Yonkers. Okay, Yonkers. Yeah.
I think Incantation is Jersey, or at least Craig Pillard is.
Yeah. He's out. I think he's out in Pennsylvania now. I think that's as far as I know.
It's a good place for his. We'll find
Yonkers, Yonkers has a vibe too. I mean, like there are some bands from Yonkers. Like I think Mortician is from Yonkers too. There is a Yonkers scene,
Yeah, totally. A couple of the Piron Bros are from Yonkers too. No,
oh, really?
Not Doug, but I know Eric is. But dude, Mortician is not. They're not good. It's not good.
I think that first record is amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know, something of Darkness or In Darkness, I think it's called. It's so like, I hate to say the word, but it's so retarded and it's so poorly made. Yeah, there's something very charmful about it. I like it a lot. I was listening
I have love for retardation for sure. I mean, in music, like it's an element that I respect. Yeah. I mean, I would say most slam is pretty fucking.
Yeah. But this goes beyond. It's not technical at all. It's just kind of like, I think it's just brutal.
Well, that's what the Mortician that I've heard. That's the record that I've heard.
Listen to the first record. I mean, that's that's like 91, I think. Something like that, 92, 91.
Well, they're one of these bands, like I want to like them. And then there are all those Mortician memes. Mortician memes going around a couple of years ago. But I couldn't tell if the joke was that they're so awesome or if the joke was that they're not really that awesome, but we're like...
I mean, they're not the best band in the world, but I think they're a good snapshot of like what was going on in the tri-state area, like 91. I mean, like I think they were very influential for people at the time. You know what I mean? So I don't know. So take that as you will, but I think that's like that's the main point of that band. There's also like Internal Bleeding, which is like a slam death band from the same time from Long Island. Actually,
interesting.
And they shared members with Suffocation. The guitar player, I think the guitar player from Internal Bleeding was in Suffocation. That's another kind of touchstone band, I think, for Suffocation because they came up together. But they're not as good as Suffocation, but they have their moments, I think. But I mean, they're still together, it's still going. So
I would always hear that name. Yeah. Alex says Suffocation, Immolation, and Gorguts really seem to be the three '90s death metal bands. Yeah, that seem to be having an influence. Um, yeah, I don't. It's funny. He says, in spite of them not being as big as Cannibal or Morbid in their prime. You know,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I feel like Morbid Angel rightfully continues to be respected as just absolute princes of death metal, obviously. Whereas like I feel like maybe it's just the people I happen to hang out with or something, but I don't. Cannibal Corpse, they're cool, but for me they were never really like a point of definition for like what's awesome. And most people, I never really, people that I talk to about death metal never really bring them up as being like riff lords of any kind.
I think they're the kind of like they're the mascots of the genre or something, you know?
Yeah, like they were in Ace Ventura, or like whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I respect them, and I think they're probably really cool dudes. But yeah, I mean, when I come to like when I want to hear some music that kind of melts me down, it's not that Cannibal Corpse.
It's not Cannibal Corpse. Yeah, they're not. They don't have like they don't suck, but it's just not riff. It's not like it's not on that level, man.
No,
like,
no.
I'm just like Morbid Angel, man.
But I mean, or Death. I mean, if you think also Death
Yeah.
is a super important band too, you know. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I like Hannibal for the idea. I think, you know.
Yeah. Well, see, that's another thing though. Like, right, like if you're talking about '95, right, you're talking about Suffocation, and you're talking about how death metal kind of already had its like, well, not like peaked, but it was over its initial kind of like wave. It's
Mhm.
like, or initial couple of waves. It's like, yeah, like by that point, Suffocation singing about like a certain amount of gore or violence. At that point, it was not like transgressive, or like it wasn't, because Cannibal Corpse, like, when I heard about them as a kid, it was like it was about the t-shirts and the cover art as much as it was, and the lyrics, as much as it was about the music. Whereas like Suffocation, they weren't any more gory or violent than anything that had come before. They were just
not at
like
all. I mean,
yeah,
no gore. I mean, like
yeah,
they had
like
no
hardly
gore.
any. Yeah.
Hardly, yeah, and they still don't, as far as I know. It's not a gore idea band, you know. It's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's really not shock value stuff, which I kind of
No.
feel like there's something. I mean, that's part of why I think it gets deep, because it's like now we're talking about the ways in which it was actually somewhat subtle lyrically,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean,
yeah.
comparatively,
Yeah. I mean, and also like this, there are other bands that were like talking about Satan, and that's another
Yep.
thing. It's like,
No Satan. Yeah.
no Satan, nothing. There's no
Yeah,
Satan.
there's different. Yeah. They're not railing against Christianity the way Immolation certainly is about hating Christianity, and then I guess Incantation would be,
Yeah.
for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So that I never really actually even noticed that. I never even thought of that. There's no Satan. There's certainly no Lovecraft.
No.
Which is, it's fine to take a breather from Lovecraft. And I mean, after Morbid Angel, how are you even gonna talk to Cthulhu? I mean, it's just like
I think with Morbid Angel, I mean, they're still riding the coattails of Altars of Madness and Blessed Are the Sick, you know. And I mean, it's like those records are just insanely. I mean, I remember I was at a thrift shop when I lived up in the Catskills for a year before coming back to Europe, and I was like in this shithole thrift store, and I found a Deicide record. What was it called? Triad? Not Triad. No, I forget. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And I found Blessed Are the Sick, and I had a CD player in my truck, and that CD didn't leave the truck. I mean, it was like I love that record so much. Blessed Are the Sick. It's such a great.
I think that's my favorite. That's my favorite Morbid Angel record, even among the early
consistently.
ones.
It's consistently the best. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Very different animal, though. Very different, than Suffocation. I guess, certainly the generation before, maybe even generation's not the right word, but the wave.
Yeah.
One wave before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You wouldn't. Yeah. Suffocation. Yeah. Like they don't have as much of. Yeah. Like Morbid Angel. There's more of those old school. Little more of thrash. There's still some vestiges of thrash in there or something,
Yeah, I think like Cryptopsy and Cryptic Slaughter, those bands are kind of important for Hobbs too.
Oh yeah, is Cryptopsy a little earlier than Suffocation? Is that
I
are
think
they?
same area. I think the first Cryptopsy record came out like a couple years before, like
I, I,
91 or something,
I think of
92.
it as the same. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cryptopsy is sick, dude.
Yeah.
That's yeah. There's a lot in common there,
Mhm.
definitely. They're like
Yeah.
they're even more complex as far as I remember with like none so vile and stuff. It's like
Yeah, they had None So Vile. Yeah, I mean, there is a kind of cheese element to them that I don't like.
yeah,
Like some weird kind of like Zappa esque like bass thing that comes through or something. That's kind of
right, like a little less Claypool action maybe,
yeah,
right?
it's kind
Like a
of
little
I can do without that.
gets a little primacy. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets a little privacy. Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering when the Primus I mean, I guess the Primus has a lot of fans now, but or they always did. But yeah, this kind of clean bass sound, like you know,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. But then again, I like that stuff too. I mean, like Human Remains is a band, also kind of not related to Suffocation so much, more like they straddled that line, but they were also like very like Zappa-y, like with their like clean bass and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I know, man. There's so many lines that like something it can be so sick and then it just crosses this one line of one parameter and it's like this is corny, man. It's just a game of inches with
yeah,
complexity. I don't
yeah.
like Zappa, dog. I'll
Wow.
say it, man. I mean, I respect that he's some kind of a genius for just, as
Yeah,
an inventor,
yeah.
musical inventor, pioneer, but like, man, that the spirit of that music is not
Not for you,
how
huh?
I feel about the world, man. I mean,
Well, now you're in LA. You're like a prog guy in LA. You should be loving Zappa. You should be like
yeah,
accepting
nah,
that stuff.
man. Beef heart, dude. If it and it's obviously it's not one or the other, but Alex is saying it in the comments, man. Beef heart over Zappa.
Yeah, but I have to say that the first two records, the first Mothers of Invention records, those are very important records. I love those records. I think they're like
Yeah.
a really good snapshot of like LA at that time, like as an historical standpoint. And
Mm.
some of the tracks on those are great, and those are just great records. I mean, and they're not cheesy. I mean, they have cheese elements, but like it's kind of rooted in like garage rock and like yeah, which I
Yeah.
love too. So it has like a I love those records. But
Yeah.
anything after that, like I like the what is it, the Willie the Pimp? What's the record he did with Beef Heart? I forgot what it was. Yeah, I don't know
I
what it was.
can't even. Yeah,
Bongo Fury, or Bongo something. Yeah, that's a great record. But anything else, I'm like, like the doo wop record or whatever. I'm like,
yeah, that's just I don't know, humor. Does
yeah,
humor belong in music? Yeah, if it's
yes,
funny,
if
if
it's
it's
funny.
funny. But if I am actually laughing, if I'm not, it's just like, bro, like
Yeah. Well,
you
there's a
should have
difference between
stayed
music,
serious.
but there's a difference between musical jokes and humor in music. You know
Okay,
what I mean? Yeah, you know what I mean?
I
Like,
think so. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like he was like making jokes on stage like a comedian in a way. Like, hey, did you hear about Ma Harper? Like, no, I didn't. It was like some.
Right.
But then if you do musical jokes, then that's interesting. That's what I like in humor in music, is the jokes that are in the music, not explicitly said. You know what I mean?
I think so. Like you mean in Zappa would have examples of that? Is that?
No, I mean, yeah, I'm sure maybe, but I mean, like, yeah, I mean, when I watched you and Sam on the Bungle thing, maybe there were like musical jokes like in that music too. Like, if you were hip to certain kinds of music, then you would get
Yes.
the joke,
Yeah. Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
mean, of like the composition, or like something that's just so absurd sounding. That's, you know what I mean? Like, that's
Yeah.
also could be a joke,
Yeah. No, I feel it. I feel it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
But that's different
Um.
being like, pulling a cat or a hat, a cat out of a hat, like while on stage and like making a funny voice, which Bungle does too. They do funny voices. I don't like that stuff, but I
Oh shit.
respect that you guys dig it, but
Funny voices, man. Well, here's a question.
yeah.
Where do you stand on death metal stage banter being done in the death growl versus being done in normal voice? How do
Who
you
asked that? Who asked that question?
I don't know. It's just a funny. Like I'm just always like interested in just like.
That's your question. I thought someone asked it in the chat.
Yeah, no. I'm just like, yeah. What do you think a death metal vocalist when they say we have CDs in the back or buy a T-shirt? Do you think it should be in death growl or regular?
I mean,
regular
did that in the very beginning. We did that. We did with like the banter in the death growl, but then I dropped it. But yeah, I mean, sure, it's funny. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. I don't know.
I feel like bands still do it in a way that's like not even supposed to be a joke. It's just like that.
No. It's for real. Yeah. I mean, but I mean, we kind of did it as a joke, but
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm down. I mean, whatever. You know, it's better than being like, "How y'all doing out there? You know, like you enjoying the show? You know,
it's doing like, crowd work and shit."
Yeah, just doing crowd work, which is like, which is painful if you've ever been on stage. You know, if you're sober and you're trying to do that on tour, that's brutal, you know?
Yeah, for real. Are you sober? Are you sober, dude? I forget.
No, I drink beer.
Oh yeah, you're drinking one right now. What am I talking about?
Yeah. I was actually nursing a hangover from last night too, but yeah, I'm not sober. Are you drinking or beer? Or no,
I don't drink. I hardly drink at all. I still smoke weed.
Oh, you do? Yeah. I kind of cut that out of my life because I was doing that for quite a while, but I cut that out of my life, and now I'm just kind of drinking. But you know, it's hard, not like heavy amounts, but it's hard not to drink beer in Belgium. I mean, Belgium has the best beer.
I imagine, yeah.
And you can go to the shop and buy like the best beer in the world. It's kind of like, yeah, well, I'm into it. And it's also like a wine thing because some of the beers are like 11%, 10. So you're like you sip it like a beer and you kind of hang out and eat a cheese. So it's like, that's a cool vibe, you know? I'm into that vibe.
Dude, Europe is sick, man. Belgium is sick, man.
Yeah.
I got to get over there. I'm not going to say who with. I'm not going to say what it is, but I think I'm going to be playing some gigs in Belgium next year.
Yeah, it's a great town. Belgians are curious about the arts, and there's a lot of good, you know, it's generally there's a strong culture about like music and art here.
Yeah,
for sure. How small a country it is, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's what I really appreciate about this city. I mean, or about the country, you know.
Well, it sounds like you have people to collaborate with though over there, because I mean, you were saying maybe you're not meeting people who are as into like death metal and grind and that kind of stuff. But since you're not doing that, I mean, you're doing electronic music and some improvised stuff and it just generally experimental stuff.
So yeah, I hooked into some people here that are like, you know, we're doing experimental music and that kind of stuff. So I'm like, you know, doing projects like that with those kind of people. But I mean, you know, if I say, hey, I want to start a gore grind band, I wouldn't even know where to start. You know, I'd be like, where's my drummer? You know what I mean? It would just be a different scene, you know? So maybe that'll happen next year. I want to do that.
This is the thing about metal related music. You have to have a ripping drummer. You cannot do it with a shitty drummer.
Although I have to say, I mean, you know, the Psalm Zero stuff and that's Drum Machine, right?
The recent record was with live drums, but the first two records that define what that
which
means.
Works. I love those records. I think they're the drum machine.
Thank you, sir.
It works good, you know.
It's I mean that's sort of a different concept. I mean that wasn't even like let's be metal, you know. It was more
right. Yeah.
I don't even know what that was. It was just like let's be dark dudes. It's just fucking
Yeah, but you need a good drummer for any sort of like death. Like it has to be a good drummer for sure. Yeah.
You can get away with other people being possibly
snappy
or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe gore grind. Maybe the barrier to entry is not quite as high.
That's a lower
grind. Gore grind confronts its misogyny problem. I mean, it's just like
Yeah.
I love that fucking Devourment was getting like self-critical and reflecting, man. It's like not who I would think would be doing that.
Where'd you read that?
I think this was from a couple of years ago, the article. I think it was maybe from like 3 years ago, but I was just
what it was? He probably got married and then like his wife was like on Pinterest and like she was like, hey, Darren, you know, maybe you should like think about this. You know, I'm not so, you know, your band's cool, but you should think about what you did. And he's like, oh, babe, I guess you're right. You know,
Yeah.
think about it. You know,
Devourment, dude. Just yeah. Pussy whipping the decapitated. You know, that's the name.
I'm sure that's what it was. Because if he was like a single dude, like living in a practice space, like all the time, he's definitely not going to be turning woke. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Breaking woke. Yo, when did you break woke? Alex says devourment, devour people. Yeah. Nice. Well done.
So,
I mean, this is one of the things about going so deep on Suffocation. Listening the past week, it's like it's launched me into just listening to a ton of Devourment again, and then just like general just like ignorant slam shit.
Yeah.
Just in general.
Yeah, I got into Hate Eternal again.
Yeah. They're super good. They're not quite as ignorant though, right? I mean, they're kind of they're a little
they're technical.
Yeah.
I think that's the guitar player from Suffocation who played on Pierced.
Word.
Cerrito. He went on and played with Hate Eternal.
Okay.
That's why he's sick. You know, I think
you think he brought some shit to
definitely.
It's not just Terrence.
No, I mean, I think that combination, the Cerrito Hobbs was good, you know, but I think I'm sure he brought some Hobbesian
Hobbesian
philosophy over the
he brought the riff of all against all.
Yeah, exactly.
We've managed to not talk about philosophy on this stream. I don't know, man. Maybe that's a good thing. I feel like every stream I do, for better or worse, it always goes to theory of some kind. You know.
Well, there was some existentialism, Mullen existentialism or something.
True. We talked a little bit about Confucianism too.
Yeah, exactly. But it wasn't. It's not theory, which is good. I mean, if it was theory based, that would go against all the tenets of death metal. You know, period.
Well, this is what we're saying. Yeah. Black metal. I've said this before. Yeah, it's like black metal. It definitely like bled into the high art world way more than death metal did. You know, black metal was like that became the what this sort of highbrow.
Well, I mean, the aesthetics were quote unquote. It's more aesthetic. I mean, that's generally what the reason is. I mean, I think if you listen to that's the only reason. It's like it was in a continuation of like this sort of Kiss glam aesthetic, really. If you're talking about the corpse paint, the leather, if you compare that to like Terrence Hobbs and Center Reach, who's like wearing like camo shorts and like, who are you gonna choose? Are you gonna choose the 6'5" Swedish guy with corpse paint for your show, or are you gonna choose Terrence Hobbs?
Yeah. Well, that's dude. This is why death metal, man. It's got that certain realness to it. Not that I don't like black metal, man, but it's like you can't demystify. Like, there's no mystery to the people are not trying to be mysterious.
No,
this is something that I've sort of I've taken more and more inspiration from death metal. In recent years, just as a worldview, or like, not worldview's not right the right word, but
But I think that might be an American thing. I think Americans are more apt to like being like, this is who I am, and Europeans generally like to cultivate like kind of poetic ideas about themselves. I think a lot, I find that often with Europeans is like, especially with the French and stuff, is like this idea of like this poetic ideas about like art and stuff like that, which I don't jive with that much. I kind of like, I mean, I love poetry, but like, just kind of these, what would you say? Like gestural ideas of like what it means to create. And like, I mean, for me, I found that to be less interesting than like the American kind of what do you say? what do you say? Wood shopping? What was the
Wood shedding.
wood shedding? Yeah.
Yeah, the wood shedding.
That's more interesting to me, you know. I mean, in terms of like visual arts and like the people that I look up to in visual arts, even as well, and musicians, it's this kind of like anti-mystery or something, you know.
Yeah, this is interesting to me. Yeah, because I've moved more away from the idea of being mysterious. I think on some
Mhm.
level, I've kind of gone in phases a little bit with it because I think with Z's it was very much not mysterious. Then Extra Life, I was kind of like getting onto some like on some level trying to cultivate like I'm this cat that like what's up with my deal and shit. And now, especially doing the YouTube thing, I've just been like, there you can't be mysterious anymore. It's a losing battle.
Yeah.
The only way it's it's like being as just being as out in the open, is like just
Yeah, I
more or
mean, I
less
think it
like all the
depends.
time
It
is
depends, and then also like at certain, it works at certain points and certain and not at certain points. But yeah, I just think about like the people who I look up to, and they're the most forthcoming people, you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like historically, like artists and musicians and other people, writers, very forthcoming, and like and in their motives too. They're just like, I'm doing this because of this, and
Yeah.
that's really inspirational. It's not like I'm doing this because the grain of the film of the black and white,
Right.
this like or like this long explanations about like their like garage band electronic project or something like,
Well,
dude,
this is
stop.
one of the this is one of my problems with like quote unquote new music or the sort of experimental music composer, grant funded institutional. One of my
Right.
problems with that is like you have to have this explanation of like my work deals with the intersection of blah blah blah, and it's
Yeah.
like I read these things and I'm like I almost feel bad for the artist feeling like they have to say that stuff because I'm like you don't even like you had to force this kind of high-minded talk just to
Right.
get the residency when I know
Yeah.
actually what you really want to do is just do your wacky drone shit, but like you
Right.
had to
Yeah.
like hype it up in order to legitimize it,
Yeah, I think intuitiveness is looked down upon now. It's not if you're like I make it, you do things in an intuitive way, and there's not like any idea about like race or gender or political ideas. And if you're just like that, you're kind of in a losing battle right now. It's kind of
Yeah.
you need to place yourself within these axes of these topics
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
And then some people are successful when they don't. I mean, I know some artists that are like that are kind of not dealing with these topics, but then like there's always going to be some person that comes along and be like, well, yeah, it is about feminism because like
Right.
it gets pushed on you somehow, no matter what.
Right, right, right. Maybe sometimes
So
the shoe fits a little bit. So it's like, "Hey, why not just push it in this direction?"
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean
Al-
that's a major problem. Huge. I think.
no, for sure. Alex is killing it. He says not much navel gazing in death metal. Looking down is only half of the headbang.
Nice one, Alex.
Nice. It's helping us.
Cool.
Yeah, man. I don't know, dude. If we're talking about extreme metal, dude, I don't know what's going on in LA, man. I really don't. I keep asking people who are the like the serious heavy bands from here, and I'm like, I'm coming up. I
As
don't
far
even
as I
know.
know, there's a lot of hardcore bands coming out of LA that are like, I think, what are some of these bands? Like, I'm always watching like these shows on YouTube, like hardcore shows. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember any of the bands, but yeah, I think there's like pretty strong hardcore scene coming out of LA.
Is
I don't
there
know, but
the
yeah,
tradition of like terror or whatever? Like,
I think it's more kind of like not so tough guy stuff,
mm,
but like kind of it's good hardcore. I mean, I don't listen
what's
to hardcore that
happening?
much anymore, but yeah, I think I'm sure there's some fucked up avant grind death metal band somewhere in the valley or something. There's got to be some.
Yeah. No, I'm looking for. Yeah. I mean, LA's huge on like sort of gothy, synthy, sort of dark and lovely.
Yeah, when is that going to
Kind
go away? That's been
of.
going on for too long. Jesus Christ.
I mean, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But yeah, I mean, sometimes.
dark and goth. You can get in on that and the goth thing. I mean, have you?
Well, I mean, Extra Life was, well, and Psalm Zero were dark,
They're not goth.
moody, but it's not. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not so much like. Also, like how you look. I mean, so much stuff is appearance, which I've never been really dialed into like a goth aesthetic.
Yeah.
Visually. I can't believe we both wore stripes, dude.
I'm
It's just so cringe, dude. I mean,
gonna try to. I can line up my stripes. With yours.
yeah. Let's line them up, dude. Oh my god, that's fucking ridiculous.
I just bought this sweater too, so
It's nice when you get the buttons on the shoulder.
yeah, this is like a Normandy fisherman sweater from the
Tight.
north of France, and it's super warm. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, this is the classic. You'll buy this the classic sweater. It's like whatever. You need a sweater here. So
Yeah, man. Well, dude, I feel like we got a vibe going. Suffocation, the topics,
definitely.
man.
Sure, definitely.
And we also I also put this out in podcast form too. So
Is it going to be on Spotify as well?
yeah, I've sort of fallen behind on uploading these things though, so I have like a couple backed up that I haven't. So I'm going to be dropping a bunch at once. But
Cool.
yeah,
That's
but,
one.
yeah, I'm not sure. I think different people probably listen to the podcast than the YouTube. But
I don't know. Yeah. Are you checking your Spotify stats for Psalm Zero and Extra
I,
Life?
I haven't been. I mean, once in a while. Yeah, people still
I like
checking
checking
it.
because once in a while, like I'll check the Run Dust and it's like, oh, you have 80 plays from Bulgaria. And I'm like, what? Like, what happened there? You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
like these weird countries that are just kind of popping up in the stat, and I like seeing that.
Well, you can use that. You can use that information if you're about to book a tour or something. You can.
Yeah, maybe I guess, but
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like these kind of sometimes it gets for whatever reason it gets picked up, like a track gets picked up, it's played in a mix or something, and then
Yeah.
people are like, oh, I like it, and then they'll play it on Spotify, but only for like a 2 weeks, and then it'll go back down.
Right.
So it's like these
Right.
like weird jumps in these countries, which is cool.
Yeah.
I like to see where the cities are coming from.
It's good to do. It's good to do the analytics, man. I mean, if you really crunch data, like if you just go wild looking at your back end or whatever,
Yeah.
you can really grow your
Really? You
audience
think
and
so?
career. Yeah, but I don't have the head for that. I'm just trying to make the next thing. I can't.
How? What do you mean? So you start like doing like direct marketing to like Bulgaria or something?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, or
Okay.
like I mean, I know people that are like really killing it on the in this,
Really?
especially like as podcasters and stuff. They're like really doing a lot of trying to figure out like who likes what and stuff like that.
Wow.
But yeah, there's only so much I could crunch numbers and stuff. Yeah, but
I don't know how to do it. I wouldn't know where to start with that stuff. I think
I don't know. But yeah, man, this will be in podcast. This will be in podcast form.
cool. Nice one.
And yeah, man, it's good.
That was fun.
Good. It was totally fun. Good catching up, man. You should do a podcast, man. No,
I don't know on what.
just on. I mean,
Yeah,
whatever,
I
man.
don't
Just
know, yeah.
on.
I thought about it. I did study
Culture.
radio. I studied radio production at Brooklyn College.
Okay, so there you
Yeah.
go. Do something about. Yeah, I mean, well, art, dude. I mean, you're in the art world. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought. Well, I had this idea where I was going to start collecting WhatsApp phone numbers, and then because there's actually a radio station like in this beautiful park right up the street from my house, and I was like, well, the idea was that it's all like DJ mixes, which I can't stand it. It's like a DJ mix like of music, like it's just I don't know who listens to this stuff. It's just like DJ mix, DJ mix, DJ. Anyway, so they have like stuff like that. But I approached the guy. I'm like, hey, dude, I want to do a talk show. But so the idea is that I'll just be collecting like 100 different WhatsApps with no names attached.
Mhm.
And I would just pick a random WhatsApp phone number and I would call it. and then put them on the on air and be like, hey, what's going on? What are you up to? You know, so it would just be like and then if that person didn't answer, you would call the next number, and then so on. So it'd be like the WhatsApp radio show.
That's it's like prank calls back in the day, but without hostility or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I would just, if I was like going to a park, I would just like maybe throw the net out and be like, hey, I'm doing this show. Send me your number, and if you're on WhatsApp. So it could be anybody from all over the world.
Oh, so people would be more voluntarily, like they would sort of agree to possibly be on the show.
Yeah. So I mean, I would be like, oh, who's this? Oh, and then you just would get into a conversation with them, or not. You know what I mean? But yeah, dude, I like the idea. You know, like just kind of like randomly call people and like have
do it, man. You should do that. Maybe. That sounds weird.
Yeah, it would be fun. But I would definitely put some time into like collecting those numbers and like keeping a database of numbers. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, it would take some time to like collect enough numbers to be like to make it worthwhile. You know?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, or have them call me. That's much better, but I don't know who's going to do that. You know, probably no one. So, yeah, I had some ideas for radio shows, but yeah, I mean, it's or podcasts, but yeah, we'll see.
There's so much good. There's so much good stuff out, man, podcast wise.
Yeah, I know. What are you listening to now?
I mean, the best. I mean, he's not doing tons of them, but consistently. You know that podcast Hermetics.
Yeah, I love Hermetics. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's so good.
That guy is really sharp, man. And
super
really
sharp.
knows his stuff. It's like it's like actually educational. You know, it's
super. Like, I listen every week.
Yeah, super deep.
I don't know how often he does it. Quite a lot, actually. You know,
is he? Because I feel like maybe for a little while it was not. It goes up and down, but yeah, he is. I mean, his lectures. His lecture series on the Nick Land book on Bitcoin.
I haven't heard that. I know he did the Gurdjieff lectures and stuff, but I listened to that. Yeah.
He did that. He did this series of lectures on. I mean, he did them as a live stream and then uploaded them as a podcast. It's like just crushing, brutal slams, intellectual slams, dude. Just riffs. Yeah.
Cool.
On the Nick Land's Bitcoin book.
And you know what I like about him is like when someone makes a point and he does like, mm-hmm. You know, this kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's a great podcast.
He's very, very British. Yeah. I mean, I listen. Yeah. I mean, that's one I'm loving. You know, Barrett's podcast Contain is really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, really, those. I like Connor Habib. You know him?
Yeah. I haven't delved into so much.
I like his. I don't. Yeah. What do you listen to podcasts?
I'm kind of plebeian. I mean, I have like, yeah. I mean, I'll listen to Moran if it's a person that I like or respect. I'll do that. I like Tim Dillon, but that's a little bit too. You like Dillon?
I love Tim Dillon. But he's a little too what?
It's a little bit too like ranty or something, or like a character he's playing that kind of annoys me, but I like it. I
feel like he's building up. I feel like some of these he's like practicing becoming the next like Rush or Limbaugh or like Alex Jones, you know.
But I like his politics because he sounds like he would be like an asshole, but he's like not, you know what I mean? He's kind of like I like his kind of viewpoint on things, you know.
No, same. He calls out the bullshit without slipping into whatever else, you know.
Yeah. And then I'm trying to think of like, you know, a lot of BBC stuff, and then also like this weird lecture podcast I'll listen to when I'm painting, or like, you know, I don't know, like the Wreath lectures, you know, like some super dry shit, you know, from like
what's the Wreath lectures?
It's just like I think it's from Cambridge. It's just like this series of lectures. Yeah, philosophy and literary and stuff like that. What other things am I listening to? True Anon sometimes. Although I'm not listening to True Anon not much anymore, but I was listening to True Anon.
The first handful. What's that?
You listening to True Anon or no?
Yeah, the first handful I listened to.
Oh yeah.
Liz Franzak is she used to live with my girlfriend, my partner that I live with. So
Oh, man.
so
Oh.
I found out about True and On because she had because Liz was just coming through town and crashed at our place. She was like, "Oh, I'm doing this podcast about Epstein." I was like, "Oh, word." And then and then it just like blew up and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think they do some really cool stuff about like assassinations and like there was a really amazing one they did on Macron that was like super good. I thought like, but I haven't been keeping up with it so much. Yeah, I mean, but most of the time I'm listening to like Howard Stern reruns on
You
YouTube.
still on Howard? That's nice, dude.
Yeah, I love Howard.
It's classic. I mean, were you an O and A fan, or is that a little too coarse?
If they had good guests,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. If they were like if they had Norm Macdonald on, I would listen to it.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I mean. But I wouldn't be listening to Opie and Anthony like. You know, but I'm not listening to like new Howard anymore. It's more kind of just I'm listening to the same things again and again and again. You know, so,
yeah. Howard with Artie, right?
Howard Artie or like Eric the Midget or like High Pitch Eric. You know, like that group. You know, I love that stuff.
Yeah.
It's so New York. I mean, it's
classic.
Like,
Yeah, classic.
And like the ball busting. You know, that's something you don't find anywhere. Like the ball busting is like the New York ball busting. Like people construe that as super aggressive anywhere else but in New York. You know what I mean? Like it's ball busting thing.
Yeah, it's endearment if you feel comfortable doing that with someone.
Yeah. So I listen to a lot of Stern and I think he does really good interviews. You know, also, I mean, when there's someone interesting, and I find them interesting, he'll do a good interview. You know,
he's a real broadcaster, man.
Yeah. Yeah,
so. Talking about New York ball busting. I mean, having Z's get roasted by Howard Stern for 3 episodes in a row.
I'm so jealous of you guys that happened. I mean, I'm like,
I gotta say that was a moment of history within prog. That was a moment of prog history.
Definitely. So what happened? Did Pimentel like send the CD or something? How'd that happen?
No, I think someone worked on the show who was just was like a big fan. Yeah, he was like a technical death metal drummer guy who was just like super into Z's and was just like, "Yo, check this out," and then they just went off on it.
And do you have the recording of that whole thing?
I don't. I tried to find it. I tried to find that online recently, and I couldn't.
I'm sure
someone we know has it. I remember my mom was really upset. She was just like, isn't that awful for you? I was like, no, it's awesome. She was like, but this thing that you just put so much love and care into and just this man just tearing it down. I was like, it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there's the classic like the no bad thing is, you know, or what is it? That's
all press is good press or whatever.
All good press is all press is good press. But yeah, I mean, that was I remember when that happened. I mean, it was such an amazing thing that happened. I mean, it's so weird. And then they did a show at the Knitting Factory or something, right?
What
they did? No. So what I remember, correct me if I'm wrong. So they're like, well, we can do this too. And then they said, well, Baba Booey, you should play the trumpet. And then Baba Booey was on trumpet, and then Howard was playing the guitar. And they were like,
that live?
We want to play a gig. Yeah. And they were called the Jerks. And then they were like,
I forgot this.
I think they did a gig at the Knitting Factory.
You're probably remembering correctly. Yeah, you're probably remembering correctly.
I think they did that, or like an appearance. I don't know if they actually, or if they did go through with it, but I feel like they did.
We probably didn't.
I remember seeing video of it. Like,
I have to track this down. I think we probably didn't milk that for all that it could have been. I think probably if we had been a little more savvy, we could have somehow gotten.
You could have played. I'm sure you could have played in the studio
if we had. If you
just like got up the courage to like, get in touch with them and do it.
Yeah. Lore, dude. Lore.
That was lore. That was like brutal prog lore. Yeah.
Okay, man. Well, yeah, dude. Sick, man. I think we could let's call it, man. Thanks for doing it.
Of course. Thanks for asking.
Doing it. I guess you're not going to be in LA at any point, right? I mean, no plans.
LA is not my town. I'm more like a Northern European guy.
Fair enough. Yeah, like I
Although
said, I mean,
I have like ideas about LA, like it would be cool to like, like yeah. I mean, I watch like things and I'm like, that doesn't look so bad. But
yeah,
then I'm
there's
like, and then I see like soft white underbelly interviews of like crack
you
addicts,
you
like
watch that.
yeah, and like
That is the most
I'm like,
low level shit that I watch.
yeah.
I'm embarrassed that I watch that, man. That
No,
is
that's
just
I don't think
schlock.
I think that's very good.
Really? You think it's good?
Yeah.
I think of it as just okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I feel
Well, I mean,
vindicated a little
I
bit.
like I like to hear people's stories. I'm always curious about like the origins of somebody. I'm always interested. And when I
Yeah.
meet somebody at a party, I'm always like, where are you from? Where are you grow? I'm like, I can be like, what, So like when you see like a 65-year-old alcoholic in LA, I'm always like, what's that guy's deal? Like, what happened to him?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. Well, no, it is
and that's
interesting,
why
man.
that YouTube channel is like, so where are you from? Like, well, how did this happen? And some of these
Yeah, yeah.
stories, and some of the stories are really sad, of course, but they're just super interesting from a human standpoint. Like,
Well, yeah, dude, that
whoa,
LA again, not to go politics, but that the homeless situation in LA, you look
yeah,
at this, you will turn into a communist. I mean, it's like just looking
oh,
at it, it's just like how can this be?
yeah. It's really, it's gotten worse, and it's becoming worse, right? I
It's
mean, that's
grim,
what they're.
dude. It's so grim. But yeah, there are great things about LA, but I guess you won't be out here. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, like Belgium, I think at some point next year, maybe next summer, I'll be out there. So
Okay.
I'll try to connect with you, man. If we're gonna be
Yeah, do it.
we're gonna
Of
do
course.
Brussels, man. Yeah,
Of course. Of course. Of course. All right.
yeah. Sick, man. See you online, man.
Welcome to my church.
Welcome to my church. Thank you for coming to my church. All right.
Yeah, thanks again, Charlie.
Yeah, man. Talk
Ciao.
soon.
Bye.
Peace.